I'm Peter Hearty with Hearty Law. In this video, I'm going to discuss what happens to the matrimonial home after a divorce. In dealing with the matrimonial home, there are three major issues which I will discuss in turn. One, is there consent on who stays in the home? Two, is there consent or agreement on the value of the home? And three, if there is consent on who stays and the value, is there a way for the one spouse to buy out the other? There is no automatic rule in Ontario law that determines or decides that one spouse must keep the home or one spouse will keep the home. Absent consent, there likely is going to be an order from the court for the sale of the home. So it's important that you negotiate or discuss with your ex-spouse the benefits of why you want to stay in the home, if you can stay in the home, and likely the best argument is going to be for stability for the children. If there are children in the relationship, you may want to keep them in the same place where they've been. There's going to be a lot of disruption in the children's lives with the divorce, but the matrimonial home may be one of those places with some stability and security where it may be and where both spouses may agree that it is in the best interest of the children. So obtaining consent, discussing and negotiating with your ex-spouse why you want to stay in the home, that's an important first step to deciding what's going to happen to the matrimonial home. Where it becomes a little more contentious is what's the value of the home. Ontario real estate in 2021 is fluctuating greatly. This is now the summer of 2021. Real estate may have stabilized a little bit, but for quite some time, houses were selling for 6 figures above asking price. So in markets like that, how do you actually assess what the home is worth? How do you determine what the actual equity is in the house? You have no idea what the house is going to sell for. So consent between the parties is very important when it comes to the value of the home. If you're staying in the home, you're going to want as low a value as possible. A lot of times pointing to tax assessments and any other sort of assessments the bank may have done that to determine whether they would remortgage or refinance a home. And if you're the one that's not staying in the home, you want as high a value as you can. So you'll point to real estate market evaluations, what the house will go for. But coming to a resolution or resolving this issue is not easy. If between the two of you, you are not able to decide on the value of the home, likely it's going to end up being sold because that's the fairest way to come to what the actual market value is. There's no better indicator of a market than a willing purchaser giving you the value of what's being sought or what they believe the value to be. Take, for instance, a recent decision from the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. A matrimonial home worth a couple $1 million, potentially. The husband wanted to stay in the home with the children, and he pointed to a tax assessment and said it was worth $2.2 million. The ex-wife, who wanted her money out of the house, her capital that she needed to go and purchase a new house or a new place to live, she was arguing the value of the home based on real estate prices in the area was $3.3 million. That's a significant gap. So you can see where issues can arise if you can't agree on what the actual value is. So assuming there's consent that one stays in the home, there also needs to be some sort of consensus on what the value of the home is. The third issue is whether or not there's enough assets that would cover off the equalization payment. So for the most part, generally speaking in Ontario, property is divided equally between both spouses. And yes, there are exceptions to this rule. But for the purpose of this video, we'll discuss where there's a 50-50 for all property. So you take all assets, subtract all liabilities, and then you determine how much each spouse has. or how much each spouse will receive. So let's use the example, a simple example. Matrimonial home, for example, has $100,000 in equity in the home. Ought to be about $50,000 each. The spouse who's leaving the home has a pension. Let's say the pension value is about $100,000. And there are no other assets or liabilities. So the spouse leaving the home with a pension decides, I want to keep my pension. The pension is far more valuable to me than what the home is right now. And this usually is called the cash now or cash later assessment. You're giving up potentially $50,000 in cash in your hand in exchange for a future value that you're going to collect on a monthly basis well into retirement. So in this very simple example, if the assets that the one spouse is leaving with about equals the value of the home, it's a pretty simple calculation. Spouse 1 leaves with a pension, doesn't offer anything up, and weighs the financial interest that person has in the home. Spouse 2 waives the financial interest they have in the pension, and in exchange takes the value in the home. So there needs to be some sort of consensus on how the equalization can happen. If there is no possible way that you're going to be able to equalize, which can also include, sometimes has to include additional financing on the home, it's up to the bank to decide whether or not they'll give you that additional capital or those additional funds that you require. So at the end of the day, the equalization is very important. Is there money actually available to buy one spouse out? If there's not, then really it becomes a very simple equation, a simple answer. The home needs to be sold. Both spouses take their equity out of the home right there. So in conclusion, what happens to the matrimonial home? It takes a lot of discussion, negotiation, and concessions on both sides to try and resolve this issue. Many will tell you that purchasing a home is the largest single investment you'll make in your lifetime. It's not an easy asset to deal with upon dissolution of the marriage. It takes a lot of work and communication from both sides, and if there is that communication and willingness to negotiate, it can become a relatively simple issue to resolve. If you've got any questions about matrimonial homes or any other property issues related to your divorce in Ontario, please contact Hearty Law today.